Welcome. Oh, wait. Let me get my chair situated. I try and find a comfortable spot where I don't have to move a lot because my square chair squeaks so much.
Yeah, I hear that in the audio sometimes. I don't know like which one of us it is, but like I think mine
me.
might squeak too. But
I
yeah,
gotta get a little. I gotta get a little WD-40.
It's all good. I mean, I don't think anyone really cares. But also, if you do care, send us an email at animalsquadrons@gmail.com.
Yes, please. Even if it's to complain about my chair, we want to hear from you.
All wings report in.
HouseDog, standing by.
Mother Goose, standing by.
Lowtech Tuck, standing by.
Lock S foils in attack position. Animal Squadron ready for battle.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Animal Squadron podcast. You're here with your hairiest host, Mother Goose.
And your second hairiest host, Lowtech Tuck.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. There is a level of hairiness between the three of us.
Yep. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I actually have the full beard. Mac just has a mustache. So.
Yeah, and I am rocking with the beard down to my chest.
Yep. Mine's not quite full enough to do that. I'd look like a doofus, but you look good.
Listen, I'll send you some grooming techniques. It's all about once it grows out that far, there's like a whole process you have to go through, or else it will look real bad.
I'd be curious to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, I spend maybe a little more time on my beard than I should, but you know what? I like how it looks, so.
Well, and hey, you get to be a pretty man because
I do get to be a pretty man. And you know what? There's no feeling better than like when you're walking through a gas station and like some old guy with like a beard you can tell he's been growing out like his whole life stops you and is like, "I really like your beard." Like that.
Yeah.
That is like one of the best compliments you can get as a man.
I also heard it said that beards are like makeup for men, and I kind of agree with it.
Oh, 100%. I have real bad baby face.
Yeah, well, and I kind of do too. Like, my chin's kind of pointy, and like I look like I'm 12. So
I think I don't know. It's been a while since I've shaved, and I have lost a lot of weight since I shaved last. But I definitely had multiple chins last time I shaved. So the beard helps with that.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Well, today we are finally talking about The Mandalorian again. I went and checked. Last time we talked about The Mandalorian was January 2021.
Jeepers.
It's been over 2 years. So today we're gonna continue talking about Chapter 3. This is The Sin. Really excited because, The Mandalorian's just so good, and there's so much to talk about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's honestly, before Obi-Wan came out, it was my favorite Star Wars show that they did.
Yeah.
And it still is. I don't know, it's with like Ahsoka coming up and stuff like that, like I'm not sure exactly what's going to be my favorite, but I will promise you it's going to finish top 4.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think that's such a hard one because I think objectively The Mandalorian is better than Rebels. But Rebels, I don't know why, I just love that cast so much.
Yeah, the characters or specifically the voice actors and stuff?
The characters. The voice actors do an amazing job, but Chopper being the second character right behind Luke with the most kill counts in all of Star Wars is so funny to me. This little astromech with over 50,000 kills under his belt.
Yeah. He's merciless, man. And also I love too how he's he's not threatening looking at all. He's just chonky.
Right.
But he still has killed that many people.
Well, so are you ready to get into chapter 3?
Yeah.
Great.
And actually, this episode is one of my favorite episodes of Mandalorian.
Yes.
This is always one that I, on watch throughs, because every time a new season comes out, I always do a watch through of the whole series to get, caught back up. Just because it's so much time in between each season.
Right.
Forget. But this one, I always find myself really, really enjoying this episode over other ones.
I think it's a really good mix of like heart and good storytelling and just really cool action. Like I feel like it hits that balance really nicely.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because I think we have two fights in this one that both are just phenomenal.
Yeah, and this is the first time really that we get to see a whole bunch of Mandalorians fighting live action.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. Yeah.
Which I definitely have a lot to talk about. I actually took notes this time.
Wow.
I know.
I'd say I definitely didn't per usual, but...
So just as a little recap, this is the episode where Din delivers Grogu to the buyer. He starts to have some regrets about it, so he goes and he steals the child, which leads to an interaction, or an encounter, we should say, with the Bounty Hunters Guild and the Mandalorians. So I think just to start us off, a couple notes I have is I really love what Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau did in terms of showing that Din is actually starting to care about Grogu, specifically with their two lines. Right when he gets there, a stormtrooper grabs Grogu's basket, and he says, "Be careful with that." And then a little later, as he's talking to the buyer, whose name I can't remember, he asks, "What are your plans for it?" And then he also asks the head of the Bounty Hunter Guild, who's a very important character, whose name I don't remember.
Greef Karga.
Yes, thank you. He asked Greef, again, what are the plans for the kid, or did they tell you? Just a couple lines here or there to really show that he cares.
Yeah, and then also, too, by asking the buyer, especially by asking the buyer, but then also by asking Greef Karga, he's disobeying a major rule,
right,
in the Bounty Hunters Guild. That's something that I'm sure could probably get him removed from the guild.
Right,
by asking,
right,
because that would be a breach of contract.
Yeah. Which I feel like both Greef and the buyer were just kind of like, well, you did this really big job that no one else could do, so we'll let it slide this time. That's kind of the vibes I got.
Yeah, I did, but I was just saying, as far as your point of, we see that he's starting to care, he cares enough to almost sacrifice his job just because he wants to know.
Right. Yeah. All really good, just really good storytelling.
Yeah.
Because it feels, this moment later where he decides to go back and save Grogu, it feels earned. It feels like what the story was actually setting up for, which I really appreciate, because if they didn't show any moments like that, like he just dropped the kid off and then went back and saved him, it would have felt really weird.
Yeah. Well, and I do like how the show kind of fakes you out, too. He does drop him off, and then he asks Greef Karga, and they're having a conversation, and then Greef Karga's like, yeah, why don't you enjoy your bounty?
Yeah.
Why don't you go on vacation, chill out a little bit, take that helmet off, big dog. Have a good time. And he just says, no, I want another job.
Yeah.
And I think it's because he's just, whether he wants to admit it or not, I think he's so just kind of in a despair kind of feeling just about the kid. I think he just feels gross about what he did.
Yeah.
And so he's just I need to just do another job and just get over it.
Right.
And I honestly kind of half expected him to just go on another job.
Yeah.
And that the show would just move on from there. Maybe we'd catch up with Grogu later.
Right.
But I love how the show just fakes you out. And like the next scene that we see Mando in, he's just busting down the door to get Grogu. I like that.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah.
I really, at this point, we're 3 seasons in, so we know what happened. But you're completely right. At that point, we didn't know what was going to happen. Like, they didn't show Grogu in any of the trailers. We didn't know he was coming, so his surprise was really cool. But at that point, it could have been anything. Could have just been the first job in one of many,
Yeah, I do think with that, like, I mean, I wasn't sure how the show was going to go at that point, but like with Grogu, I mean, it was made pretty clear, I felt like, that he would be important. We would see him again.
Yeah. Just not
like
not how we did get it. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought, like maybe the Empire does take him away for a long time.
Yeah.
Maybe like seasons down the road we'd see him. I mean, I had no idea.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. A couple of smaller notes I had is I really like how Beskar looks. Like the metal with the like lines, the like wavy lines across it. So cool.
Oh yeah, like almost like a Damascus steel kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I thought that was sweet. Yeah.
When so talking about Mandalorians and Beskar, Jedi Survivor, I think I for a while I had my lightsaber based on Bo-Katan. So I had the Beskar, which is almost like a wider metal in the game with like a lighter blue. It looked sick. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah. Because Mandalorian armor, once it gets turned into armor, it loses those waves. So I really appreciate it in the game that it kept them.
Yeah, which I almost wonder with the Mandalorian armor, like, is it because it's melted down and forged and like pounded out, and so it's now a single layer instead of a bunch of layers?
Yeah.
Like how it looks?
Maybe.
Because like Damascus steel, that's why it has those wavy patterns, is because it's folded and like it's it's a bunch of different layers of metal like layered together.
Yeah.
Is what it is. And so I almost wonder if Beskar's kind of the same thing. It looks like it.
Yeah. No, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I also really like the case that it was in. Just the 4 doors
the
that
tower.
would kind of reminded me of like drawbridges that would come down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was sweet. And also how like the doors just like fold back up and they're just like got your little carry handle and you just walk away with it.
Very handy. Yep. Grief got a little Beskar too.
Yep, which actually becomes important later on in the episode.
Yeah, I'm very I was very surprised, especially after watching season 2 and seeing how protective of Beskar Din is. That, like, watching it back again, I was very surprised in that moment that he didn't say that belongs to the Mandalorians.
Yeah. Well, I also wonder too if, again, he was just so not himself because of the Grogu thing. Like maybe he just was like,
"That's a really good point,
take
Tuck.
Just
That's
take
a
it.
really
I don't
good
care."
point. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's just a thought. Because I mean, it's this show. I will say one of my favorite things about this show is it really was the first time, I think, that very clearly a character with no face, you can clearly see their facial expressions.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really explain it, but that's just they do it really, really well. Like this is what should be like a case study for that. Like if someone wants to make a movie in the future about whatever, like this is something that they should watch to understand how all of that works.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I really think from his body posture and stuff, and like in the way that he's moving, like I think you can tell that he's not happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. That's kind of where I'm getting this information. Like it's like it, just the way that the scene feels is that he feels very guilty about what he's done, and he feels just like he feels kind of depressed. I think. Yeah,
I agree. And I think part of that is probably Dave Filoni. We get to see, we haven't seen it much in live action, but in the Clone Wars, we see it all the time with the clones and the Mandalorians, like seeing their facial features, even though we can't see their face. You know,
Yeah.
and so I think they like, I want to say converted. That feels like the wrong word. Transferred maybe that to live action really well.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so too. And then also credit to where credit's due. I mean, I also think just Pedro Pascal's a really good actor. Also,
Yes, it's actually
Yeah.
not Pedro under the mask.
when is it Pedro? Is it just him talking? And that's
Yeah,
it?
so
Oh.
it's his face, and anytime, or it's his voice, and then anytime he takes the helmet off, obviously it's Pedro. But it's actually John Wayne's either son or grandson most of the time.
Oh.
Him and another guy. Talk about the scene. Let's start talking about the covert a little bit, and I'll look it up.
Okay. And remind me, just because sometimes Mandalorian blends together for me a little bit. This is the covert where they're in like the sewer.
Yes, and so this is the episode where Din takes the armor, and they have a little bit of a dispute. Him and Vizsla, I can't remember.
Paz
Vizsla, about the fact that he got the Beskar from the Empire.
Right. Yeah.
And this is also where we see him get his new armor.
Yeah. Right. Okay. The covert. Well, first of all, just the fact that they have to have coverts was kind of a newer idea to me. I historically have not been a big Mandalorian lore person. I was always a lot more into the Jedi and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, like the clones and things like that. And so it was kind of a new thing for me, but I really thought it was cool. As far as it being like sort of in a sewer, I definitely got some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle vibes.
Yeah.
That, like, you know, it was too dangerous out there and this is just where they had to live.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a very interesting thing. I also think that looking back, this is, I think, where you start to realize how radical the Children of the Way.
Children of the Watch.
Children of the Watch. Like, this is kind of, I think, where you start to realize that they are radical for Mandalorians. Because in Star Wars, the Clone Wars, for instance, seeing, like, Bo-Katan and, like, Satine and people who aren't Death Watch, they're a lot less radical. And you kind of see, like, what I guess is normal for a Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And this, like, whole you can't take your helmet off. If someone says something that everyone agrees with, they go, "This is the way." Like, in unison, and it's very, like, culty.
Very culty, yeah.
Very culty, yeah. But I really, and then also the Forge. The Forge was, honestly, I think, the sweetest part of the covert.
Right. Can we talk about a second on how she's, like, forging the metal, and poor Din is just having war flashbacks to his parents getting murdered?
Yeah. Yeah, but also well done, like, as far as, like, how they present that. And the Forge just being throughout the show where that stuff happens. That's such a unique thing. I like it. It reminds me of, like, that trope of, like, a character staring into, like, a campfire and having it, like, kind of the same sort of vibe.
Yeah. It was fun getting to see battle droids again.
Yeah, and also much better live action battle droids.
Yes.
Like,
They
I
looked
thought those
really
B2
good.
super battle droids looked way better than they did in 2002 or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, to be fair, you know, we only saw them for, you know, a few frames. It's a lot easier to do extra detail in something you're only going to be showing for, you know, a couple seconds compared to, like, you know, episode 2 where we had, like, a 10-minute battle scene with a bunch of them in there.
I think it's more like 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of, and also too, I mean, it was 20 years ago.
Yes.
Well.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, so it's Brendan Wayne and Lateef Crowder. I apologize if I pronounced any of those names wrong. They're the two, like, stunt doubles, and they're most of the time, that's who we're actually seeing is one of them. And then Pedro just voice acts over it.
Yeah, which credit where credit's due. I mean, those guys are really talented.
Yes, for sure. They did an amazing job.
Yeah, just going back to the point of the body language and stuff. I mean, those guys are very talented.
Yes.
Good for them. Yep.
Okay, so a couple things I have for here. One, the Kowakian monkey lizard being cooked. We get to see another one as Din's walking from the byre to the covert. We see a couple things mentioned. The Great Purge, which I think creates this mystery like, oh, the Mandalorians got purged? What's happened there? Because last we saw it was rebels, and Sabine had just given Bo-Katan the Darksaber, and she'd united the Mandalorians as one, and, so they were... Last we saw, they were doing great, and then there was a great purge, So it created this mystery of what's going on. Like you mentioned, the kind of culty vibes. This is the way. The armor specifically says, have you removed your helmet in front of anyone, or has your helmet been forcibly removed from someone? I don't know. It just creates really cool... It's really cool world building.
Yeah. And with not a lot that needs to be said. I mean, I think, that scene is not even 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's very short.
5 or 10. And we learn a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think we learn exactly what we need to in that moment because, later we find out that the Children of the Watch are a subgroup of Death Watch, and that after the purge, essentially, there was a bunch of infighting, and they're the survivors, and we learn about the Night of 1,000 Tears, I think is what it's called. But it's all stuff that we learn in the right moment, It's all stuff that gets built up to over the seasons, which is really nice.
Yeah, well, and that's one thing where season 3, I know, got a lot of flack in for various things. But one thing I really appreciated with it is that that's when we finally got to see, the after effects of the Night of 1,000 Tears.
Yeah.
Because really, in season 1, I think it's season 1, maybe it's even season 2, that scene where we just see, TIE bombers flying over.
And hitting their domes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really all you see, and it's just, a few seconds.
Right.
And that's it.
Which I think...
And... Oh.
I think something I would have liked for them to do is we as people who watch the Clone Wars know that the Mandalorians had to live in these domes because their planet was pretty much unlivable besides in the domes. So we watched that scene and we're like, oh, they blew up the domes. That makes sense. But I think for people who didn't watch the Clone Wars, I do think it would have been good if they just explained that a little better.
Yeah. Well, and also one question I have is, what about the Mandalorians on that moon? That Mandalorian colony?
The Death Watch?
Yeah, but also, there's, a colony there, too.
Yeah, I think...
What happened to them?
I think that's what the armor was talking about. They after that happened, there was a bunch of infighting, and I think they kind of maybe killed each other off.
Oh, so the Empire didn't have to.
Yeah, ooh. I could be wrong, but that's the vibes that I got.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Or they just scattered through infighting, maybe their leader died and
yeah,
they just left. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's but that is, again, just what the world building thing and the way that this show is paced is, I think, very good as far as telling the story. Yeah.
I agree. Okay, do you have anything else here in the covert?
No, not really.
Nice. Oh, we should mention vibroblades. Din and Paz fought with vibroblades just because Mac will get mad if we don't bring it up.
Yeah, which...
10 episodes from now, he'll be like, hey, you guys didn't bring up the vibroblades when they were here. What's up with that?
Yep, I'm sure he will. Actually, he'll probably bring it up next week. He'll be like, actually, what y'all said about vibroblades is wrong. It's actually...
Sorry, I cut you off, my friend. What were you going to say?
Vibroblades that's the same thing as like Hunter's knife in Bad Batch, right?
I believe so, yes. I think his knife is a vibroblade as well.
Yeah, which is like that's something that is nearly as hard as like Beskar and like lightsabers and stuff, right?
Yeah,
it's pretty close.
Yeah, I don't. So we see them like slice the Beskar, their knives against the armor here, and it doesn't cut through. So I don't think it's quite there, but I definitely think it's close.
Yeah, it certainly would cut through like stormtrooper armor like butter.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably one of the reasons they all have one.
Yeah, probably. I'm sure the Night of 1,000 Tears, unfortunately, they had to learn some lessons.
Yeah. Oh, we also get to see, Din get his whistling birds here, which I think is one of my favorite pieces of equipment that he has.
Oh, yeah. Well, and also this is one thing that I didn't know about before the show happened, and I really liked it, and then also later how he uses them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Against those stormtroopers, and he kills like 12 of them.
Yeah.
like immediately. Yeah.
I like how the armor is like, these are rare, use them wisely, and he immediately goes and uses them.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, though, in that situation, I mean, he was surrounded and on his knees.
Right.
So
it makes sense.
Grogu wasn't going to get out of there. He might have, just because his armor deflects blaster bolts, but Grogu would have died, so.
Yeah. Okay, a couple scenes back at the bar with Greef. I think what they were trying to show was like the Mandalorian, he's all cool in his new shining armor, right? It just kind of looked like he was more uncomfortable.
Like as he's walking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone turns to him and, they've got their eyes on him. And it does look cool. I do love his new armor, but it does look a little funny. And then all I've got for this scene left is one line where Greef says, well, if you care so much, just go to the core and tell the New Republic. And Din kind of like chuckles and he says something about the New Republic being a joke.
Yeah.
Again, just really good storytelling, because you get a lot from that single line.
Yeah. Well, and also it makes sense. I mean, at this point, only 5 years after episode 6, they probably are still a joke.
Yeah. They're doing their best to get everything together. And, Greef specifically says that all that's left of the Empire is like mercenaries and warlords, which we know now isn't necessarily the case, but, even if they are just a bunch of random warlords, that's still a lot of firepower.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, do you have anything on this bar scene before we move on?
Not really. I mean, I think just the main thing is that this, I think, for me, is where we see, I think this is pretty much where the main plot points are in the bar scene.
Mm-hmm.
So it's where we see that, that Mando feels guilty about what he's done, and that Greef desperately doesn't want to lose him. Like, I think the Mandalorian's someone that Greef would kind of do anything if he thought that Mando would keep working for him.
Yeah, I agree.
And you see like kind of that vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, I don't think it's because at this point that Greef likes Mando. I think it's more of just that he knows how important he is for money's sake.
Yeah, he's a valuable asset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. And then it builds some story.
Yeah.
But really, other than that, I mean, I think we've pretty much covered it.
Well, great. I think all I have left before the all the killing starts is Din goes to a ship and he's about to leave, and he looks and he sees that the little ball is gone. So he finds it on the ground, the one that Grogu's been going after consistently, and he looks at it. You can see it. You can see it in his non-existent eyes, that moment where he's like, I gotta go back.
Yep. Yeah, he's like, I can't leave.
Yeah.
I can't leave my son.
Okay, so I think he goes to their base and he's using his weapon to listen in to their conversation. That large blaster, I can't remember what it's called. Do you remember?
His rifle?
Yeah.
Like his big rifle?
Uh-huh.
I don't remember what that thing's called. It's a big rifle.
Yeah. I know it's important because, Boba Fett, in the original cartoon that he was aired, had the same rifle, and then we never got to see it live action until The Mandalorian. So I know it's important. I just can't remember what it's called. Anyway, he's listening to their conversation, and they're talking about the child, and it specifically cuts out, and we hear some static, and then it cuts back in, and we hear expressly ordered us to bring it back alive. So clearly they said Moff Gideon's name there, but they cut it, it statics out, so Din or us as the audience can't hear it. And again, just really good storytelling, like, who is this person? Who's controlling these people?
Yeah, when you start to understand that the buyer is not the most powerful person in that room.
Yeah.
Not in the room, but like in that organization. It would really, at the start of the episode, I think he's kind of pitched that way.
Right.
And then you start to realize that, oh no, he's just a middleman.
Yeah. Just following orders. Mm-hmm. And then Din kills a lot of people.
Yes, he does.
What do you got, my friend?
This rescue scene is... I like the whole breaking down the doors and killing all the stormtroopers. I just think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a really cool bunch of fight scenes. There's one... I think this is the one where you can kind of see that he is not used to the new armor yet.
Right.
Because he takes a couple shots before he is able to get them and stuff like that I thought was just really cool choreography.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked the eyeball doorbell. He rips it out and he runs behind the building, so all the stormtroopers come out that side, and then he blows a hole on the other side.
Yeah, which is just such a Mandalorian thing to do.
Yeah, very smart.
I like that.
We talked about his whistling birds a little bit, and how they work, and the fact that, he uses them to kill a bunch of stormtroopers at once.
Yep. And then, the scientist, Dr. Pershing. Mm-hmm. This is where we meet him.
Yeah. We get to see that he actually cares about the child as well and was hoping to keep him alive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Man, I sure like this guy. I really hope nothing bad happens to him later.
Yeah, it would be awful if something bad happened to him.
Yeah.
By someone he trusts.
I'm sure
that would be bad.
I'm sure he's just gonna have a really good and happy life.
Yep, I think so too. He might retire one day at an old age. But yeah, no, I like that too, just in general with Dr. Pershing. Like, you can also see that just because someone's an Imperial doesn't make them a total monster.
Right, yeah, I completely agree. And
even like high up Imperials like him are not necessarily evil people.
Right, sadly, they were just people doing their job.
Yeah, and also, he didn't know. He didn't know what the plans were. Right. He was just told to run some tests. Like, that's not... as far as, like, the following orders thing, like, I think people... Whenever you say that, people think, like, that people were complacent and they had all the information.
Yeah,
but
they didn't.
Really, I was gonna say, he didn't know. Like, he didn't know any better.
Like, that's...
He was just doing what he was paid to do.
Each stormtrooper had... a lot of them did do bad things, but like no one besides Palpatine and maybe Tarkin knew like the full extent of all of the evil deeds that were happening around the Empire. A lot of them thought they were the good guys.
Yeah, and that they were just protecting law and order.
Yeah.
And that's it.
So he saves the kid. Do you have anything else fighting the stormtroopers?
Not really. Like, especially if you've seen it already. We can go into the frame-by-frame choreography of it, but I don't really... just watch it.
Yeah.
I think you'll really enjoy it.
He burns a guy alive at some point.
Yeah, he does. And who wouldn't like that?
Right.
That's good TV.
Exactly. So from there he leaves, and a bounty goes out and he gets surrounded by pretty much all of the bounty hunters in the city, which what a horrible city to be in, to have a bounty go off on your head. The one where all the bounty hunters just hang out.
Yeah, no kidding. And yeah, but that scene too, I think, does a really good job of explaining just how much the Mandalorian does care about Grogu.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because he's willing to leave it all behind just to protect this little kid.
Yeah. Yeah, and like he even is given an opportunity, like, give us the kid and maybe we can talk this out, and he still doesn't take it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's willing to let them kill him.
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple notes I have in terms of like the action here. I really like that he, he tells the droid to drive in the little cart that he jumps into, and the droid refuses, and he points his gun at him, and the droid starts going. That was really smart. Jumping in that cart gave him a lot of protection. I really liked him using his blaster. I specifically wrote it down as him Thanosing people.
Oh, with his rifle?
Yeah, because he blasts them and they literally turn to dust.
Yep, they just no longer exist.
I felt bad for the droid when Grief shot it. Smart on Grief's side, though. I mean, it was sad to see him die, but it shows that Grief is actually an intelligent man.
Right.
All the other bounty hunters are shooting at Din.
And Grief's like, I can hit the brakes.
Right, I can
now.
actually do something about this, yeah.
Yeah. And actually on the rifle thing, is this where we see that it's also like a melee weapon too?
Yeah, a big old
like,
taser.
Doesn't he start hitting people with it? Yeah, just jacking people up.
Yeah,
with
somebody
it.
comes in and like tries to grab his feet, and so Din, he turns around and he hits the guy with the end of the rifle and tases him. And there's a person standing behind that guy, and so when the first person falls, he just immediately shoots and kills the person behind him.
Yep.
We see him use his flamethrower like towards the end of the fight before the rest of the Mandalorians show up, because they're all like running in at him. So he uses his flamethrower to keep them back. And then of course, movie timing, he runs out of gas.
Yep. And then that's when the homies show up.
Yeah, that moment is, I think, one of the best moments into the entire series, where it's a low shot looking up at Din's face, almost from Grogu's perspective, as he's covering him from blaster shots, and a missile flies over his head and hits a sniper. Such good cinematography.
Oh yeah, and also again, just with the fake outs on this episode too. Like, I mean, the way that covert scene feels is that and especially like his argument with Paz Vizsla is like, the covert doesn't really want him there, and they don't really care about him, is kind of what you, like, the feeling you get.
Yeah.
And then this here is when you realize, like, oh no, they do care about him. They're family.
Yeah.
And they're coming to save their boy.
It kind of reminded me, like, between the fight that Paz and Din had earlier in the episode and then them coming to save him, it reminded me of that sibling mentality of, I can bully my siblings, but you can't.
Yeah, it's like, if you do, I'll kill you. But
yeah. Yeah, I really, again, just another really good shot is, it's a like top-down wide shot of the bounty hunters kind of attacking Din, and then behind a building, a bunch of Mandalorians like come up using their jetpacks and start firing down at them.
Yeah.
And I really like Din's line where he says, "You'll have to move the covert," and Paz says, "This is the way."
Just like, well, and also I imagine we learn later, for instance, that Paz's son was a foundling that he adopted.
Yeah.
And like, I'm sure that, and then when we know that Din is a foundling that was adopted and stuff like that. And I think that they probably have had to do that a couple times.
Yeah. I mean, it's how they survive, I think.
Yeah. And I think like by this is the way, like, not only is that part of their religion to say that, but I think he really means it. Like, he's like, well, this is the way.
Yeah.
We'll do it again.
Last two notes I have are Paz follows Din for a while with his jetpack, and then, you know, he turns around to continue fighting, and Din's just like, I gotta get me one of those.
Yeah.
Really like that line. And then, of course, we go back to the ball where Din gives it to Grogu.
Yeah, and gives it to him to hang on to, which I thought was awesome.
Just really good storytelling.
Oh, absolutely. And I gotta get me one of those. Like, I love lines like that in movies and TV shows that, like, yeah, they're kind of cheesy, but it's like he's saying what you're thinking.
Right.
You know, like the actor says what you're thinking. Like, I like that a lot. It makes you feel really connected to him. I just think it's cool.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, do you have anything else on this episode?
Can't really say I do.
Well, great. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Animal Squadron. If you want to be a part of this conversation, you can email us if you have any questions, complaints, comments, anything. We would love for you guys to be a part of it. Our email is animalsquadron@gmail.com. Again, that is animalsquadron@gmail.com. You can also leave us a review wherever you're listening, and if you're listening on Spotify, I will specifically leave a question down below asking what you thought of The Mandalorian Chapter 3. Anyway, thanks again for listening, and for the Animal Squadron, this has been Mother Goose.
And Lowtech Tut.
See you, everybody.
Adios.